Alrighty. All right. This is module 4, if you could believe it. It seems strange to me, that we only have two after this. So thank you for joining me, us all today. Um, we're going to continue to talk about the body and then kind of move into the soul. Mhm. One of the last things we discussed in our previous module was sort of that early experiences impact our perception. So perception impacts our core beliefs, right? So it impacts how we see ourselves and how we see other people and our world. So core beliefs also inform our behaviors, and it impacts our body stances, our movements, and our functioning. So it really has a lot to do with our mind body soul connection. So if there are limiting beliefs, then there are ways in which we hold our bodies that communicate that not only to ourselves but other people. So when I think about core beliefs, I kind of break it down into different areas. So behaviors is like the beliefs that shape our actions. For example, someone who believes they are capable and deserving of success are a little bit more likely to take challenges and risks and sort of persevere. Someone who doesn't feel that way may hold themselves in a particular way or behave in a particular way that it's risk averse. Body stance. So our beliefs can influence our physical posture. Someone who feels confident, maybe stands a little bit tall, maybe a little bit more open, relaxed. Somebody who's maybe a bit more insecure, maybe slouch, crushed shoulders, maybe averts their gaze. And then movements. Our beliefs actually affect our movements. So someone who feels energized, optimistic, they may kind of have this spring in their step, they might feel bouncy around you. Somebody who feels a little bit more depressed or anxious might move either more slowly or hesitantly. And then functioning. So our beliefs can also impact our overall functioning. Someone who believes they are a valuable and worthy human being, someone who deserves love, is more likely to have healthy relationships and have a positive outlook, right? So it's just important to notice what your core beliefs are as they influence your behaviors. It's not your destiny. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way. So just the more that you develop awareness around your beliefs, the more you start to pay attention to what your body is also doing. So as I've said before, the body is a compass. It's offering sensory feedback and physical cues. So it senses the terrain and detects imbalances, and it kind of guides us towards equilibrium. When we're especially stressed, we know we're out of balance, right? When we're fatigued, we know we're out of balance. So questions that I keep asking every time on this slide in particular. So what is your inner GPS whispering? How do you access your inner wisdom daily? And what practices do you find most useful? This is a concept that I geek out on, so bear with me. It's going to be a little geeky, and then we're going to smooth out into more um, slower terrain. So there's this term, another term. It's called visceroception. This is the process of sensing and interpreting and integrating sensations from the visceral organs, so such as the gut, and particularly along the gut brain axis. We know that a lot of things happen from the brain all the way to the gut. They often will say our gut is our second brain. So this facet of interoception um, is kind of like what we talked in the last module. Um, it interprets information like heart rate, thirst, hunger. So the visceroception is the ability to tune in deeper to your visceral organs. It's understanding for treating disorders like irritable bowel syndrome. So that's one disorder that kind of comes up in this context. And it's a complex relationship. I can't get into all the geekiness of it, but um, there's something really fascinating about this relationship. and it involves this neural, hormonal, and immune um, bidirectional process. So, and it's similar to what we talked about last time regarding the vagus nerve. There's constant communication happening between your gut and your brain, which is why if you follow any of the functional medicine people, they will talk about a healthy gut microbiome, because if you don't have a healthy gut microbiome, your immune system might be inflamed. It might cause brain fog. Um, it might facilitate, you know, other cognitive challenges. Like slow processing, difficulty sifting through information and focusing attention on any one thing. So there are trillions of bacteria residing in your gut, and it influences the production of neurotransmitters. And so again, this bidirectional relationship is really important. The implications for health are, I've mentioned a few of them, but so for mental health, the gut is really important for things like depression, anxiety, even autism spectrum disorder. If your gut is out of whack, there's something else happening, and I'm not saying it causes it, but when you have healthy gut flora, it positively impacts your mental health. It impacts digestive disorders, so IBS, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, things like that. Neurodegenerative, you know what I'm saying, neurodegenerative diseases, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. So I'm just full disclaimer, you all know this. I'm not a medical provider, clearly, but I just want to kind of talk about the importance of physical health as it relates to your mind, body, right? Um, So some of the recommendations, if you follow any functional medicine providers, will tell you things like, diet is important, stress management is important, sleep, exercise. And to go a little bit further into that, something that's particularly interesting to me because of the work that I do as a mental health professional and a coach, and then my own physical journey is so diet, right? So when you consume a diet full of fiber and probiotics and prebiotics, foods that reduce your inflammation can be incredibly helpful. I notice that when I'm eating more sugar or processed foods, I just don't feel well. Like my joints swell up, my mind kind of slows down, my I feel bloated. It's just like a lot of physical responses to that. Stress in particular. I mean, we've talked about stress, we hear it all the time, and I want to make a differentiation between eustress and distress, because stress is not all stress is created equal. Eustress is the positive stress we endure when we're experiencing something pretty positive in our lives, like buying a house, traveling, getting a promotion, maybe having a baby. Like those are hopefully positive experiences and simultaneously stressful. Distress is the chronic, unmanageable stress that we experience on an ongoing basis. Sleep is big. I can't tell you how many people I speak to who say they have sleep issues, whether it's difficult time getting to sleep or they get interrupted throughout their sleep cycle or they wake up really early. Decreased sleep really reduces cognition, it increases weight gain, irritability, emotional lability, which is just kind of, having the ups and downs of emotions, and difficulty concentrating. It's also something really, and I don't know if you all know this part, it really fascinates me, and I know it happens to me, that it increases ghrelin levels, and ghrelin is responsible for it's called the hunger hormone. So if you don't get adequate sleep, you're more likely to feel hungrier, so you overeat. um, and then another thing, exercise, we all know this, move your bodies in ways that feel good. Some people say to me, I just hate exercise. Okay, don't exercise then. Do something else that moves your body that you feel good. Maybe it's gardening, maybe it's walking, maybe it's yoga in your living room. I don't care. Do something though to move your body that doesn't feel like torture. um, One of the things that I love telling people as it relates to some of these just behavioral strategies that you can incorporate to take care of your physical body is every time you make a decision that might be the harder one, we're casting a vote for our future self. So when we make a decision to move our body as opposed to lay on the couch, if moving our body feels like it's more important than resting, then we're choosing the harder thing and we're choosing something that's for our future self. So do we want in the moment comfort or do we want long-term quality of life, right? So to talk just a little bit more, I am particularly fascinated by this, like I said, this topic, this connection that happens between our mind and body. And often there's these competing votes, so I said, do we want to vote for the in the moment? Do we want to vote for the long-term quality of life? And then a question have is, what happens when you get a gut feeling and you can't quite explain it? Maybe you don't really understand what's happening, but there's something instinctually that you feel needs to happen. So there's this deep sensation inside you, and you're just like logically, it's like I don't even have words for that, right? Um, so this is going to be a little bit of a discussion and a little bit of invitation, if you're willing, to kind of talk about the overlap and or distinction between gut feelings and intuition. Because as we talk about, the gut brain axis, and we talk about um, the deeper levels of, we'll talk more about the soul next time, but intuition, how would you define them?
Are you, are we supposed to answer?
Yeah, if you want to, yeah, I would love for you to be part of a conversation. Yes.
Oh, okay. I just think about that very first, first thought
Oh, Nicole, you're either,
that
it's
comes
my
from
internet
your,
or yours. You think you're breaking up.
uh-oh. Okay, you can't hear me? Hmm.
Was it just me or did everyone?
Did you guys hear me?
No, she was breaking up for me
You,
too.
Okay.
okay.
Am
You
I
might
still
try to,
breaking up?
no, now we can hear you. Great. Yeah, no, that sounds
Huh.
better.
Okay. Well, to me, it's just that first thought, that first, gut instinct, the first thought that comes to mind. That very first thought you have, and then a lot of times we'll poo-poo it away. Because it's like, oh, I can't do that. That doesn't match my life and what I'm doing right now. That's not going to work.
Yep. Yeah, so you're sort of saying it might be the first response, the one that doesn't really make sense, but it's the one that comes to mind the quickest.
Yeah. To me, it sounds like I mean, usually that's the right one, but maybe a lot harder to implement. Like
Yeah.
how, you
Yeah.
know.
I think like a gut response feels a lot more forced to me than like an intuitive response. Like that's more like unsolicited information, whereas like I don't know, I think of more of like a knee-jerk reaction when like at an impasse, when I think of like going with your gut, I guess.
Mm. So maybe gut feeling is more reactive.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas intuition just comes and goes a bit more freely.
Okay. hmm There's no wrong answer. I mean, I have some notes kind of jotted down, but yeah, there's no wrong answer.
I don't know that I can tell the difference between intuition and gut reaction.
hmm Yeah.
I would think intuition is something I reflect on, and gut reactions I just react without thinking.
Mhm. Yeah, so again, kind of what Melanie was saying, more immediate, maybe.
Well, and sometimes wrong, in my opinion. I mean, maybe for her not, but like I can tell if something upsets me,
Mhm.
I might react inappropriately if I don't stop and think.
Yeah, sometimes people use them interchangeably, and I would say that there is some nuanced differences, right? So the gut feeling does actually kind of take on a physical sensation. So it actually kind of might be a knot in your stomach or a flutter in your chest. Maybe it's nausea or a kind of this emotional reaction. It can be influenced by past experiences and learned patterns. Intuition is a little bit more refined, it's deeper. It gives you sort of this aha moment. It kind of goes beyond the emotions, and it's like more a little bit more subconscious. Um, and part of me also kind of wants to say that there's overlap because sometimes our gut reactions are accurate, and the reason they're accurate is because it's based on our responses in our past experiences. The intuition is sort of the thing that's sort of nudging us to say, "Oh, go this direction," right? So,
So would you say nudging us to go like, oh, go this direction, like that comes up over time? Would you say? Or you're talking about right in that moment, it's kind of saying, hey, what do you think about this? Maybe go this way, right in the moment? Or it keeps coming up over time?
well, honestly, my definition of intuition would be that it's a little bit of both. I think it can be in the moment, and I think it can also be touch points if we're paying attention long term, because there's nuances to it. And are we actually getting quiet enough to listen? Because there might be nudges, but are we actually paying attention long enough and sitting with it long enough? So I'll give you an example. So when I was creating this program, this is a really good example. I was out hiking with a really good girlfriend of mine, and we had spent it was a long weekend, and we were just having a blast together. We're in the middle of this like 6.5 mile hike, and I just start getting these, like, I call them downloads because it's just like ideas and stuff flooding into my head. And I'm like, okay, Heather, we got to stop right now because there's a lot happening right now. And so I took out my phone and I started drafting notes, and I was like, oh, in this program and this, we could talk about this and this and this. And then consistently for months, it would happen in spurts. And I could have just not listened to it. I could have thought, oh, well, that's just, whatever it is. But it happened in the moment. And then it happened again multiple times throughout the last couple of years. Does that kind of answer the question,
Mm-hmm.
or I guess respond to it?
Yeah, I always think of intuition kind of it comes up more than once for me
Okay.
about what,
Yep.
yes, kind of like what you described.
Mhm.
I sort of think of intuition as something that comes from inside you
Mhm.
that you've either learned or experienced and you react
Mhm.
that way.
Mhm.
Whereas the other is more of a reaction. And usually if I want to react, like bite somebody, I kind of say, well, wait a minute, think about this. This is a reaction, and either that's not who you want to be or that would not be a good choice. But in a therapy session very recently, we were just chatting about something, and all of a sudden I went, do you think this is why that happens? And I think that was intuition. It came from inside me, and I went, can this be true? Is this why
Mm.
I'm sad about this or that. So something
Mm.
in my head or my heart or my soul or somewhere went, think about this. But then a phone conversation with a friend where she's just carrying on and I want to go, would you just shut up? And I'm like, no, no, no. let's think about this a minute. So I think of one is coming from inside and the other is coming from outside.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the biggest things that I love to teach people is I think the gateway to this process is really delving deeper into the layers of self-awareness. So the more that we know ourselves, the more that we can explore the landscape of others. And there's something really interesting and curious to me about patterns because I see it in myself, I see it in my clients, I see it in people around me. There's something about an emotional pattern that gets created in ourselves that comes up over and over and over again, and it might be different circumstances or people or situations, but it's the same thing. It's the same root thing. So, what might be patterns that you experience, and how do you move through them with more ease, right? Like, okay, I'll give you a personal example again, and I hope this is okay. I'm just like telling you all my things. Um, when I was younger, I was born with hip dysplasia, and I had to be in a brace. And so for the first 6 months of my life, I was constricted by this brace. And so if you think about a little one being constricted for the first 6 months of their lives, I mean, they need to flail. They need to kind of know what their ground is, what their boundaries are. They're just trying to get a sense because physically, that's all they know. And so my thing that comes up at age 40 still is feeling free. I need to feel free. And so the creation of that, it comes up in so many aspects. And I'm like, oh, that's my thing again. Yep, okay, there I am doing that thing. It's something really important to know about yourself, right? Because boy, if I didn't know that about myself, can you imagine how many ways I could be destructive if I wasn't aware of that, you know? So freedom can take form in a lot of ways. Um, so I just think this process is so interesting and I love having these conversations. As I say all of that, does anything kind of get stirred up or does anyone have a comment about patterns or emotions or
I get frustrated with myself because I'm a good chunk older than you. And I'm like, how on earth did I have to become so old to finally figure out the most basic things?
Mm,
Uh, I still haven't figured it all out. I didn't have a bad childhood. I didn't have a good childhood. It was complicated.
mhm.
And I think I still have a lot of the stuff, behavior patterns stuck from that. And I've never been able to unstick them because it's so obscure that I can't even figure out myself if it was good or bad because it's complicated. But I'm like one of 11 kids and just a lot of different dynamics in the family, mental illness that was covered up. And so I knew that in my head, I knew I was loved, but I didn't feel it in my heart. And I'm like, why? Like all these years, and I can't, I just get frustrated that I can't get past the layers. And I think so. I just try to cover them up.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and Miriam, I think you touched on something really, really important. And I appreciate you even just being vulnerable enough to share that. So one of the things that has really become apparent to me is that so cognitively, well, I mean, I was loved, but I didn't really feel it, right? So there's a felt sense. There's something about the felt sense that's missing. And so that's kind of where somatic psychology comes in, where it's really trying to tune into the different levels and layers of how the body is either protective against it or doesn't know how to access it or is not paying attention to when you really are loved and can you actually receive that amount of love because there's also that too. So the felt sense, it's
Mhm.
yeah, you're not alone in that.
But Miriam, I think you learn from that experience, and trust me, I'm older than you are. Um, the more the more you want to understand yourself,
Mhm.
you learn also how to treat other people, not reacting, but using I statements, instead of, well, you're being an idiot, saying something like that really upsets me. I've talked about that with some of my granddaughters. And I think you're open to learning and understanding yourself and treating others how you maybe wish you were treated. And it's nobody's fault. It's just life. It's life happens. Nobody purposely said, you're an idiot or whatever, that they just blurted out. But we've learned, and you learn more as you get older. And if you're open to understanding that and processing it, that's kind of cool.
Mhm. Yeah. And to get even closer to the question, like why does it take this long? um, for a lot of reasons, I mean, as a therapist and coach, I've been doing this work personally for a really long time. I also do it professionally, and there's so much to know. There's just so much to know, and it just takes diligence and practice, and um, it
And
can be.
courage. It,
Encourage, yeah, and
it's
capacity. Our nervous systems may or may not be ready to go to the places that we logically want to go. Because
it's
there's been times I've wanted to do some really deep, important work, and my body was too flooded. I could not go there. That's just the reality of it. You can't
But I
force
think the
yourself.
younger you are, you don't realize the way you're treated or the things people say to you aren't really good. So you don't have the courage to say, wait a minute, could you have said that differently? Or
Hmm.
my my hair is not horrible. It's
Yeah.
fine, or
Hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
But that one good thing about aging, you learn as you get older. But I think young people don't realize that that's not right.
Yep.
They used to it. They either
Yep.
build a shield or continue the pattern or whatever. I don't know.
Well,
I
they
think
think,
what's hard for me is not actually knowing what upsets me about the past. Like I can't even put my finger directly on it. It wasn't things that were said. And so I think it frustrates me that I can't figure it out, so I can't change it.
Ah, well, that's. Is that a limiting belief?
Well, I mean, I should backtrack. I have changed a huge amount in many different ways, but I can't change the feeling of how I feel about my childhood. I have
Right.
changed myself as a person a lot. I'm like super different from when I was young, but I um, I can't figure out why I'm upset with my family. And sometimes I know this sounds a little crazy. Okay, so you guys get the full crazy disclosure now. I'm not. I've never even smoked a cigarette, so I'm definitely not into drugs. But I've been reading this book on LSD and mushrooms, and I'm like, I want to have maybe I'll have this deep knowledge of everything that happened, and then I'll understand.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of people going down that path, especially as of late. A lot of hype around that. But so, Miriam, I can't tell you how much I'm like you in that sense because again, the mechanisms of things are really important to me. Because if I can't figure out a problem, then how am I supposed to fix it? Right? It just drives me bonkers. And so, here's what I'm learning though, and this might be helpful. You can take it or leave it, but we might not know. We might not know what the frustration is with the relationship with your family. We might not know. So then But we do know that it comes up over and over and over again. So then can you heal yourself or be at peace with yourself in that moment? Can you parent your little child as an adult, right? You know that it
Mm-hmm.
comes up. And or I don't know what kind of paths you've gone or places you've gone for assistance, but there's actually a lot of really cool stuff out there that helps you get connected to that. I mean, you could do LSD if you wanted, but I mean, there's like other lanes if you wanted to try
Well,
something different.
taking the shortcut.
What's that?
I said I was taking the shortcut.
Yeah, you're taking the shortcut. I mean, there's no judgment.
Yep. A lot of the psilocybin, research and
Yep.
going that route. And they were doing it in the 60s and 50s, like a long time ago. And then now it's come up again. But another thing too, I was thinking is like being able to process those emotions. So you say like, I logically get it and stuff, but those same feelings keep coming up. So I think of EMDR. And Bethany, I know you said that you do that in your practice.
I do emotional freedom technique. It's a little different. I don't do EMDR, but it's
Oh,
similar.
the EFT.
Yep.
Okay. So the EMDR has been, it's been super helpful for me,
Yeah.
just to process those things. And then once they're processed, it's kind of like then they're out of your body or they get placed in the proper place and they don't come up for me anymore.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. All right. Beautiful. Okay. If you feel comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes. Just kind of notice the inhale and the breath. No need to change it. Just let it be. You can always have access to your breath. That can be your grounding force. So notice and bring attention to your head. It's the top of your head, your scalp. Notice any sensations. There might be tightness or tension. Might be warmth. And then move your attention to your forehead, your eyebrows, your eyes. Just sort of feel the weight of your eyelids if they're closed. And then continue down to your nose, your cheeks and jaw. Just relax your jaw muscles. And then move to your neck and shoulders. If you can, allow the muscles to soften and melt. You can bring your attention to your arms and hands and fingers. And then focus on your torso. Bring your awareness to your chest and back and stomach. And notice the rise and fall of your breath. Feel your hips and your lower back. If you can, just kind of wiggle and maybe release some tension. And then attend to your legs and feet, focusing on your thighs, knees, calves. Just notice any sensations. Let's bring attention to your ankles and feet and toes. Just bring it all together and take a few minutes to just scan the body. Notice if any area needs a little bit of love. The goal isn't to change anything. You just simply observe your body without any judgment. So if your mind wanders, just gently bring it back to your body. One of the things I try to live by is at least once a day, may my head be where my feet are. And this is just to say being present and attentive head to toe is one way of reminding yourself that you are exactly where you need to be. So if you want, you can go ahead and open your eyes. Anyone want to share any reflections?
My back hurts right in the middle, just this one spot. I just couldn't like.
Mhm.
That was kind of just what kept coming up to me is when I knew that it was.
Mhm. Were you able to give it a little bit of love, or were you just kind of bracing against the pain?
Oh, like I mean, I adjusted a little bit. Like I realized at one point I was really uncomfortable, so like I needed to move. So that helped a little bit, but uh,
Hmm.
yeah, some of it was just like notice and let it be there because it's not, it's not always one that like repositioning helps with. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it normal to have like one side feel just completely different? I mean, last time we did this, I think somebody said the same thing. Like my right side feels higher almost than my left side. Like I feel like
Mm.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's actually pretty normal.
Is
There's
it?
a lot. Yeah. Yeah, whether it's one side or the other, whether it's you maybe feel twisted or contorted, whether one side has a little bit more pain than the other. I mean, it's normal. Ideally, we're, trying to
Trying to be balanced?
trying to be balanced, and sometimes we hold and store pain, information, memories differently in our bodies, and so it just sort of stays, you know. Yeah. Yeah. All right. I'm going to go through this next piece a little bit quickly. This is a resource that you can utilize when you are feeling particularly activated and or wanting to activate some resilience, right? So we talked a little bit about the window of tolerance last time. So the window of tolerance is, there's this sort of window, this metaphorical window that inside the window you can kind of navigate everyday stressors pretty well inside the window. When we're outside the window, above it, we're in hyper arousal. So anxious, jittery, can't settle down, feeling kind of out of whack. Underneath the window is hypoarousal, so it might be numbness, sort of depression, fatigue, right? So if you don't slow down long enough to pay attention to what your body is doing and telling you, it's difficult to sort of check in. The question to maybe ask yourself is, am I experiencing activation or am I experiencing shutdown? Am I feeling at peace? Am I feeling at calm? Um, so you can kind of, if you want, you can write some of this down. You'll also get it in an email. So you'll have all the information. But essentially, this comes from the sensory motor psychotherapy Institute, and they use this acronym, and I really appreciate it. I think it can be really helpful. So pause is the first thing. Pause what you're doing to briefly identify bodily signals of unrest. So it might be things like muscle tension or weakness, shakiness, numbness. You just sort of stop to take stock. We just did a little bit of a mindfulness exercise. You don't necessarily need to go through that whole thing. It was several minutes long. You just pause for 30 seconds and be like, okay, what's going on in my body? um, The E stands for embody, so it's a somatic resource that it feels really supportive in your body. So it might be a groundedness, acknowledging that your feet might be touching the floor. It might be noticing your surroundings, so looking at colors or shapes. When you're particularly activated, this can be helpful to just get outside of yourself. The A stands for acknowledge, sort of the positive effects of the resource. So you may notice an increased relaxation or softer eyes, maybe more energy. The C stands for concentrate your attention on positive effects, if possible, for about 15 seconds. So basically, you're just noticing that something's happening. And if you can, try to stay there for about 15 seconds, because that's the thing that's going to help regulate the nervous system. The E is engage with your environment. So again, you're looking to notice things that are outside of you that are pleasant. So it might be sights or sounds. You might notice that the air on your skin just feels good. You can tap into other senses if they feel accessible. So we're sort of blending this process of, again, interoception inside of yourself and exteroception, the environment. So it's this bidirectional process. There definitely are things that you can do. Let's see, slide. To kind of access that mind, body, soul connection as it relates to the peace protocol. So things like a hand massage can be helpful if you're sitting at your desk and you're just feeling maybe tense in your muscles. Um, you know, if you have animals, that's always good. You do some petting. um, I know some of you probably know people who do this, but drumming can be really helpful. Listening to music, yoga stretches. There's this really cool butterfly tap, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to show it to you because I have my sling on, but I'll try. So sometimes when I'm feeling like I just need a little bit of something on both sides of my body, I don't know if you can see this. So basically, you have your hand on either side of your body, and you just do this butterfly tap. So you engage both sides of your system. And it's a little bit of a hug, and it's also just a little bit of engaging both sides of your body. There's a lot of bilateral stuff that you can do, and EMDR, like Nicole was talking about, EMDR is kind of engaging the bilateral parts of your brain to have them talk to one another. So when you store a trauma in certain parts of your brain, and when you do this bilateral stimulation, it changes the structure and where the memories are held. So it can be really effective. I'm not going to get too crazy into this graphic because we're running low on time, but this is something that go ahead, Hillary. Oh,
Sorry,
was that?
my son knocked me out. Keep going.
I was
Keep going.
gonna
I'm
say,
sorry.
I was gonna say, was that the little one? Okay.
Yes, it was.
It's
Thank
all
you.
good. No worries. Okay, so the Roby chart, this is something that some practitioners use in conjunction with, you know, conventional medical treatments. I just thought it was a really interesting visual. I'm not an expert in it, but what's interesting to me is how, from a mind, body, soul perspective, where they see thoughts, beliefs, and emotions are held within the physical system, right? So things are held in our liver and in our spleen and in our fascia. And so I'm not, again, not an expert, but there's just something really interesting about these different traditions that are coming together to talk to each other about emotions, thoughts, beliefs, physical sensations. They're all connected. And then, so we talked about this acronym last time. So, be open to discern your knowing. So, as it relates to interoception and exteroception, it's really getting familiar with the sensations in your body. Because I'm guessing there's probably patterns that show up on a pretty regular basis. What is it? Racing heart? Is it indigestion? Is it tightening of your thighs and legs? Is it, feeling constricted in your throat? There are physical sensations that we all have experience on a pretty regular basis. When do they show up? How do they show up? Are you noticing it? And then what happens when you focus on it and it wants to talk to you? Can you breathe a little deeper into it to ask it questions? And I know that might sound strange, but there is this communication pathway that's happening. So if you just pay attention a little bit closely, it will talk to you. All right. So I actually really love this quote by Thomas Jefferson. If you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done. Right? We talked a bit about patterns, and we have a tendency to sort of want to perpetuate the same thing and practice the same thing, thinking that, oh, if I just do this one thing, it'll get me the results. And it might be the opposite. Right? So it's really about discernment. Like one of my words is just like lately, discernment, really trying to figure out what is the difference between X and Y, or intuition and gut feeling. Okay, let's do